Hello and welcome to your Daily Detroit. It is Tuesday, March 4th, 2025. I'm Jer Stays, and joining me on the line is none other than Fletcher Sharpe. How are you?
I'm all right. It's warming up. The big old sheets of ice on the sidewalk are now becoming puddles. So it's a different hazard to have to traverse, but I guess I'd rather do that than slip and fall.
Now, I know you walk a lot of dogs. How are the dogs doing through everything in the world right now?
They love puddles. I don't. They love puddles. So, I mean, if they're happy, then kind of got to just say, okay.
Yeah, I think today's episode, it's a bit of a palate cleanser. You know, we are going to do a little bit of fun. We're going to infuse a little bit of hope because Fletcher Sharpe, the Detroit Pistons are actually able to figure out how to win lately. It's kind of wild.
I'm not terribly surprised. I've said the past 3 years, obviously expect him to accumulate draft picks, but I kept saying my ceiling for this team, whether it was last year's team, which bad, the year before, which was somehow better, was, hey, dark horse, they could be one of the lower seeds going into the playoffs. Probably play in, but lower seeds going into the playoffs. And at this point, where we're currently recording, they're 6th in the Eastern Conference, 4th in their division. They're playing really well. They're exciting, and they're young. And that's kind of one of the best things to be in the NBA is have a team full of younger players who also bring some excitement to the court.
We were getting things together, and I saw that you had a list of 5 reasons you should be watching the Pistons, even if basketball isn't your number one thing. I think the town needs to be paying attention to this team, man.
My biggest reason, which I'm sure everyone can assume, oddly enough, he wears number 2, but he's number 1 for me. Cade Cunningham, 6'6" guard out of Oklahoma State. He had a rough few first years dealing with injuries, and then last year, not really as injured, just the team around him was not very good. Which is funny enough because, again, a lot of the players are carrying over. Not every player, but a lot of them are. It just shows how big of a job J.B. Bickerstaff, the new head coach, and Trajan Langdon have done with this roster. But Cade Cunningham is a superstar. Not even he's on the way, he's a superstar. He was voted to the All-Star team, All-Star game this year. I don't see a way that he is not an All-NBA player. For even people who don't really follow basketball, they probably know the name Nikola Jokic, who is the most likely 3rd time in a row MVP of the NBA. In the entire NBA season this year, there are only 2 players averaging more than 25 points and 9 assists. Nikola Jokic, who's averaging almost a triple-double, and Cade Cunningham. That's rarefied air. That's an insane stat to think about. Number 2 for me, I mentioned the cohesiveness between this team. Last year, there were moments where you could tell these players just want the season to be over. If they could simulate to the end of the year and be we're done, season's over, no thanks, they would definitely do that. This year, this team loves to be around each other. You can tell on the court, you can tell in the little clips that they put on social media, the Pistons social media team. There's a clip from their last game where Cade Cunningham went behind his back to Jalen Duren, who caught it and then dunked on somebody. The entire bench went crazy. Entire bench. If that had happened last year, you might have got a few claps, maybe a few yeah, but nothing solid like that. Number 3, one of my favorites, Malik Beasley, 6'4" guard who came by way of Minnesota during the offseason. If you are a fan of the old NBA, that's the big, bruising, we're gonna punch you in the mouth, you might not like Malik Beasley. Malik Beasley is a shooter, and a 3-point shooter to the point to where I think it's a bit excessive. Last game, he shot 19 attempts. 14 of them were from 3. That feels, to me, I'm realizing reaching old, as I've been called a few times. 14 3-point attempts by one player seems like a lot, but it's effective. Currently, before their last game, he was the league leader in 3-pointers made in the season currently. He shattered the record for 3-pointers made in the season by a Pistons player for the franchise record. He's probably going to fall, I don't know, somewhere between 300 and so makes. Or so. He's at a high rate. It's honestly surprising he didn't go to the All-Star weekend to shoot in the 3-point contest. But He's a personality. He's got a little bit of a shimmy when he hits a shot that's becoming. Pistons fans love it. Other people very much hate it, which honestly is good. Like that, you want to see that.
I want to add a point to this, though, Fletcher, because you were saying people are calling you old. Sir, I have 10 years on you, and I still refer to myself as a veteran young guy. If you're old, then I'm ancient, and I'm not even getting mailers for AARP yet.
My knees are older than you, so
that's true. I've seen your knees. Wait, that doesn't sound right.
like when I might be my vital age, but when it rains, my knees swell. So number 4 for me is the end of their season. They have some pretty winnable games. You don't want to just necessarily say they're going to just win games, but they have Washington twice, and Washington has become the Detroit of now, where how the Pistons last year were famously said by Kyle Kuzma, who's now in the Milwaukee Bucks, you just don't want to lose to that team, which is a hurtful thing to say about your peers, even if it is true. Washington has become that team where you just don't want to lose to them. So playing them 2 times, the 11th and the 13th of March at Little Caesars, you expect to have wins like that. They also have Oklahoma City coming in with Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, another young superstar Canadian. To watch him and Cade battle it out would be great. There are some exciting games coming back. And one of the things that I like about the Pistons being good, similar to where the Lions are good, when the Lions were bad and good teams came in, you're like, this is great for them. I'm going to get to see Peyton Manning throw 75 touchdowns against my defense. Like that, it doesn't feel good. But when the Lions are good, it's like I get to see, Patrick Mahomes, and I get to watch the Lions beat them. Like I get to do this. I get to see these other players come into Ford Field, and I get to watch the Lions beat them. Now it's kind of like I get to see, before he got hurt, Victor Wembanyama for San Antonio, or the Cleveland Cavaliers. Or Steph Curry. I get to watch him come to Little Caesars Arena, and I get to watch the Pistons smother him and beat them. And it's such a nice feeling to look up and say, hey, our team's actually kind of good. People are not talking about this team as a joke anymore. People are talking about this team with a sense of they could actually do something. When you have sports analysts saying, I'm surprised by this team, and if I were a top team, I would not want to play against them. They even beat the Boston Celtics, who won the NBA championship last year. And my 5th reason, which kind of ties this all together, is, again, they're in the 6th spot in the Eastern Conference, which means right now, if they stay exactly where they are, no more games end, they will be in the playoffs above the play-in spot. And the last time they were in the playoffs, I was graduating from high school. So 2008. And I remember that team. They played against LeBron James. They had Stanley Johnson, who locked him up for like 1 or 2 games, and he's like, my goal is to lock LeBron up. And then his next game, he scored like 50, and I was like, yeah. But it looked like, all right, we might do better. And then the next year was not great. The following year was not great. And then it just went from being this proud franchise that was respectable, gritty, and tough to we're playing the Pistons. You can put the subs in early because it's not going to matter. So to see like the revitalization, not just with the Pistons, but with most of Detroit sports, with the Lions coming back, the Red Wings being more competent, the Tigers roaring into, what they did last year, and then the Pistons being what they like. It's great. It's great to see like Detroit going back, because when I was younger, people were like, Detroit is a sports town. All of our sports teams are good and well supported. And as I got older, I realized yes and no. Like, I'll wear a Pistons jersey, but I'm not going to watch them play because they're going to get blown out by 30, and I don't want to do that. Or I'll wear a Red Wings jersey because, of clout, but also they lost like 7-1 yesterday, so whatever.
I mean, I remember when the Red Wings were the Yankees of hockey, and I loved that era. That was a special, it was a little bit before your time, but this town was electric around that stuff, man.
No, that was my time. I grew up with them being who they were, the 5 Russians. People love to just, we are Sergei Fedorov, made number 91, like, cool. I honestly wasn't a huge fan of the Red Wings as a result, because I growing up was like, I hate the evil empire teams like the Yankees or like the Green Bay Packers or the Red Wings. And people were like, boo this kid. This kid's weird. So yeah, it's just to see everyone coming back and playing well. And the best part for me is not even the fact that they're playing well, but I can speak definitely for the Lions players and the Pistons players, and to a degree for the Tigers. They want to be here. Like, I know in the offseason, the Tigers tried to sign Bergman, and they offered him a big contract, and he ended up not taking it, and he went to the Red Sox, and people are like, they missed out. If you're going to give someone $170 million and they say, I don't want that, they don't want to be there. And you want teams full of people who want to be there. And with the Pistons players, they want to be in Detroit. You see, they do community outreach. They want to be among the people. We can talk about Jamison Williams with the Lions, who just goes out into like the conies that people don't really talk about at like midnight, and people embrace him because he wants to be here. He wants to be here. And like, you want to build teams. I mean, obviously, not everyone on the roster is from the state of Michigan, let alone like even the Midwest. But when people come to these areas, obviously they're paid to be here, but they choose to ingrain themselves in the society, that makes you want to go and watch them and support them even more. And just to see Pistons players at St. Cecilia doing things around the city, just getting into the culture that is Detroit, like that makes me feel all warm inside. Then to go watch them win by 30 makes me feel even better.
Yeah, these people have options. What is the number one reason you think there's a big difference between this year and last year? What's the big difference?
JB Bickerstaff. That's it. The head coach. I mean, obviously they got Malik Beasley, who's a shooter. They got Tim Hardaway Jr., who's a great veteran guard. But the biggest difference is JB Bickerstaff is not Monty Williams, and Trajan Langdon is not Troy Weaver. Troy built the pieces for this team, and you can rewind all the episodes from last year and before, where I was like, you know what? Be patient. I know I have a friend listening who's going to definitely point this out. Troy Weaver did build this roster, essentially. Cade Cunningham, Jalen Duren, Jaden Ivey, Marcus Sasser. These are all players, Isaiah Stewart, Asar Tom. These are all players who were here when Troy Weaver was here, that they were selected, but they were being used improperly. If someone tells you to go hit home runs and you're a singles hitter, you're going to look very bad because you don't hit home runs. You hit singles. If someone says go do what you do, you're going to look a whole lot better. And JB Bickerstaff has this team playing a lot more loose and a lot more comfortable. And as a result, you see Cade start to flourish. You see Jalen Duren become one of the best big men in the NBA. People are trying to trade for him. You see Malik Beasley become the dead-eye shooter that we've all known that he can be. Isaiah Stewart still wants to fight people, but that's just his own nature. You can't really stop that. But you see this team as growing into their own, and while they still, I'm not going to say they're going to be NBA champions, but like they're a team that you want to watch. If you have NBA League Pass, you look for Pistons games because something exciting is definitely about to happen.
I want to do a little bit of community housekeeping here. A few updates on Daily Detroit. I wanted to share first off, the happy hour at Tocororo, the 313-day trivia is sold out, which is crazy. Thank you so much. I'm looking forward to seeing people at a packed bar in Eastern Market. We're going to do a live show. We're going to have a bit of a history thing, a history trivia by Mickey Lyons. So I'm very excited about that. Number two, we are up for Best of Detroit with Our Magazine, which it's crazy to even be nominated, Fletcher Sharpe. And what do you think of that? Because I saw you posting about it with some pride, which you should do. And remind people that you can go to ourdetroit.com and vote.
You got a few days to go do that if you haven't voted. It's wild. Like, people really see Our. Like, you think it's just a magazine, but like people throughout the entire metropolitan area of Detroit read and look at Our. So for something like that to say, hey, we think you're one of the best at what you do, is great. And like, that's obviously a tremendous, awesome thing. But you know what's even better than that? winning. So yeah, if you're listening, you should really go vote. Go to the link, scroll down to podcasts, go to Daily Detroit, click that thing right next to it, the little button, and then you can vote for whoever else you want. Personally, for yoga, I think you should vote for a Full Lotus yoga. It's run by Liz DeFore from Grosse Pointe. Lovely. She got me, who's super inflexible, to be able to touch my toes, and that's like an accomplishment of its own.
If we win, I think not only do we have to go to our Detroit party, but also I think we need to throw our own little party.
Yeah, if we win, I'm not wearing pants like that day when they announce it. Like, I'll wear them to our party, obviously. But the day they announce, like, oh, you guys won, don't ask me to go anywhere because I'm showing up in underwear. And you better be okay, because I'm going to be like, I'm an our award winner.
With no pants.
We don't wear pants when you win these awards.
Well, let me tell you this, though. I have lived my entire life knowing with this axiom, home is where the pants aren't.
True. I actually said yesterday at an event, they're like, it's so hot. I can't wait to get home. I'm like, yeah, I can't wait to take off my pants. And they were like, what? And I was like, that's it. That's when you know that I'm home. If you come over and you come over unannounced, you will see me in honeybee compression shorts. And it has to be okay because you didn't tell me you're coming over. I'm not changing for you. It's my house. You get comfortable or you leave.
Fletcher Sharpe, that is oddly specific. Finally, I want to mention that our spring survey is up at dailydetroit.com/survey. We're always looking to learn more about how you're consuming the show, the newsletter, the social media. We are a small team. You know, Fletcher, you and I do this, Devin, Norris, but like we're not working, you all are contributing in various different ways, but we are a tiny team. We have very few resources, supported by a few sponsors and our members on Patreon. So we really have to focus on where we can do the biggest bang for our buck. It would be great to build up our members on Patreon, patreon.com/dailydetroit, so that we had the resources to do more. But we got to focus. And so we need to know what you all enjoy the most, what we can do better at, where you're at, where your head's at with things. So we do this survey. This is our spring survey. We try to keep the survey short so we can know more about what other shows you're listening to. How are you consuming our content? That kind of stuff. So if you can do that, dailydetroit.com/survey, we really do want to hear from you.
And if you haven't, you really should get on the Patreon because there are like a bunch of really cool little things on there. We have an unedited, extended podcast. There's a lot of cool things. And I know people like swag, stuff we all get for sure. So why don't you just do it and then be happy you did it later?
I appreciate that. With that, I'm Jer Stays.
And I'm Fletcher Sharpe.
Thank you so much for listening. Remember that you are somebody, and we'll talk tomorrow.